What's going on YouTube? Welcome to another video. You're joining me here for another workout here, doing some SFB squats, changing up the angles. I'm just trying to make this boring lifting stuff not as boring. Obviously, there's not much you can do outside of it. Busy at gyms and stuff, it's hard to find angles, but whatever. We're still gonna do the work. And probably should have moved the camera a little bit, cutting off my face there, but what's most important is you see the movement being done, things like that. Pretty standard, working my way up here. Threw the belt on around here. I usually will keep the belt off until second to last working set, depending on how I'm feeling. But I hate everything there is about squats. I despise them. So when my lower back or I'm not feeling too confident, I'll throw the belt on and kind of just go from there. So whatever helps me get through the workout and get done what I need to get done. Kind of looking back, a lot of this stuff is just, I think, tightness from like not stretching and going to extreme ranges of motion and not letting myself recover. So one of the things I'm doing now is a lot more stretching like after the workout, dynamic stuff before, open up the hips and everything. And then once you've worked out everything and you've kind of exhausted yourself, to go and stretch where everything's kind of loosened up already can really help, relieve any of that issue. And by the time it manifests, you're going to have to dedicate a little bit more time to it and be consistent. One stretching session isn't going to fix it. So that's the hardest part. The hardest thing to do when, working out after you've done everything is to then go lay down and stretch where things are just like uncomfortable or whatever. But I get super, super tight in my hips, quads and everything. And so yeah, I will ignore it because it will feel fine, and then there'll be times where it just doesn't click or whatever, and then I'm like, man, what's going on? I don't feel too confident, body kind of hurts, and then I'll know, okay, probably should start stretching when I start to feel those issues. So the best way to avoid that is to just straight up commit like your lifting schedule to stretching, even if it's a few times a week. That's honestly what I need to do. I've made it a goal to at least open my hips up with some basic PT stretches before I squat that don't take too long, but it's all the work that you're accumulating after the fact. There's residual carryover with almost every lift that you're doing, especially if you've got 2 or more squat days a week. And again, insert any body part muscle, it's kind of the same thing. Your chest and lats are going to get sore, and they will be not the primary movers in other workouts, but they'll be assistants. So if your lower back is a little bit tight or cramped from like a leg workout, and then you going in, to try to bench or something, you may get some spasms or whatever. So you really just have to figure out what your best form of recovery is. Some people, it also depends on volume too. Like some people just don't do a lot of volume. And so repetitive reps on reps on reps with progressive resistance, you're going to get tight. You're going to do things outside the gym in your daily life. You're going to get groceries. You may do like maintenance on a car or whatever. You're going to put yourself in positions. You're going to be sitting in a chair working at a computer and in a position that doesn't seem comfortable. And then you're going to get up and feel all that tightness. Like if you've ever gone on like a road trip or something, or like a long plane ride, or even in a boat, you stand up and just being in that fixed position, everything's kind of tight and locked in. And it takes you a couple moments to kind of get blood circulation going and stuff like that. So I found that that's basically what's been happening with the lifting. Because once you get warmed up, you're in a good spot though. When you're starting your workouts with the big compounds and squats, it can be something stressful to get under the bar, especially if you're low bar squatting, just to get into the position and get the motion, everything down. But once you're kind of moving, everything else kind of feels easier. That's why I've always kind of done my hierarchical training where I start with like the most stress-inducing, intense, lift. The one, obviously, you can do the most amount of weight on, and then taper down. You start off there, you break down the legs into quads, hamstrings, calves. Same thing with back and stuff. You go into other different parts of the back and then bicep or whatever, and obviously the weights will get less and less just because of the threshold of what the muscles can handle. So I've just always done that, and it's worked best for me. Sometimes in the gym, I will switch out certain accessories or do something first. And again, it's not going to make or break your workout, but it just might feel a little bit different than the last time you did it. So you really have to temper your expectations. You know, I'm somebody who's like tracking everything that I do. I mean, if you've sat through the entirety of the video, I have a log of everything I've done in that workout. And I'm trying to do more or change something in between workouts, add a rep, add some weight or whatever, kind of go from there. So that's always been my mechanism, and it's always been what I'm trying to do. So something has to change. Again, you don't need to do that. That's just how I train. And there are some times where you might be doing the same weight the week previous just because you couldn't get, that minimum threshold to move on. So you got to just kind of do what you got to do. All right, moving on to chest and shoulders here. So again, benching. And so this is kind of the thing too, what I mentioned before with squats. Sometimes that lower back and just laying on the bench is like the least intensive of almost any upper body, lower body movement you're gonna do. You're being nice, supportive, you're just chilling out. If you do get tight on everything though, that's when those issues start to like manifest. Lower back, you can kind of see here how I'll position myself here. And then also the leg drive and stuff too though, if you're trying to get tight. Yeah, it's just, you gotta monitor it. And honestly, usually we don't start making changes until something catastrophic happens, an injury, not able to move as much weight as you once were, and then you kind of troubleshoot. So when you have to troubleshoot, it's already too late, so there's going to be a recovery period, and that's kind of like what my whole thing is. So even now, every now and then my shoulder and tricep will act up, and I've been known to get tricep tendonitis, so I'll kind of reduce the volume of tricep stuff, maybe go lighter. I'll change the movements around, maybe focus on the range of motion and stuff like that. That's the thing. Your body, it's not going to heal from workout to workout. It's going to take sometimes several days to get to a point. That's why we, manipulate training frequency and volume. That's why we have deloads to kind of control for that and be able to get yourself in a more ideal position. If we could infinitely keep making progress, you'd outgrow gyms pretty quickly. Everyone's got a different threshold for what they can do, so it depends on what your goals are. If you're powerlifting and stuff, obviously your main goal is to move as much weight as possible. So you're probably not going to prioritize those accessories with high reps. It just doesn't make sense for your goals in mind. But like I said, I'm building a foundation in a house, so basically start off with the heavier movements, and then everything else is used to kind of fill in the scaffolding and structure, make those muscles big and strong, so that when we come back to these, obviously not a heavy weight, these heavier weights to me, then we've got the foundation to be able to kind of push past whatever limitations we may have. And so, it is what it is. If you just are lifting heavy weights all the time, mass moves mass. Obviously, there's a debate to be had with body composition when it comes to body fat. Obviously, having more lean mass is more beneficial for you. When it comes to lifting weights, people in heavier weight classes tend on average to move more weight than those below them. Obviously, you're going to have some outliers, but it's generally true for the vast majority of people. Most people will kind of notice that when you do gain weight, your bench, upper body lifts will go up, and your cardio may suffer. You're carrying around more body mass, but the more you eat, the more you recover, the more muscle mass and overall mass you put on, you just seem to be a bigger, stronger person, and that's just how it is. So you got to decide kind of what's beneficial for you. And if you hover around like a similar weight range, you can recomp. It's not going to be ideal to what you're looking to do. You're not going to be blowing past PRs when you're controlling for nutrition or maybe not eating enough. And then same thing, if you're lifting real heavy and stuff, and the stress on joints and everything, and you're not eating, that can do some wear and tear, cause some damage, and you really have to figure out kind of what's the best mechanism for you to do all that. And then in that same vein, body mass and stuff, adding more mass to it, you may not be able to do as many reps. Your cardio may suffer just because you're working a little bit harder to manage all that extra mass that you have. But, that's essentially the lifting thing. And it's this constant balance where you figure out what works for you, what's enough to get by, how can I kind of break through things and kind of go from there. So if there's anything to be learned from this video, it's to take your your training, make it methodical, take the rest when you need the rest, and then try to do some prevention, whether it's stretching or taking some time off, and just kind of recover from there. So That's the video for today. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching the latest video. If you want to help support the channel, I actually own my own wet shaving and grooming e-commerce website where everything's handmade by me. It's www.apexsoaps.com, and you can get a 10% off code using wet shaver. We've got some cool scents here. We've got some Coca-Cola scents, a horchata scent, traditional barbershop, just some really cool stuff. And you can purchase samples or you can buy the whole set. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out via email. Be quick to respond. Thanks for watching.